Hey Divination, thank you for joining us in this live stream, and today I will show you how to create swipe menu bars with Divi and the mortgage broker layout pack. So if you haven't checked that out yet, make sure that you do. I've mentioned a link in the description below, and if you're not an Elegant Themes member yet, make sure that you check out Divi. I've mentioned a link to the product page where you can go ahead and discover everything for yourself. So without any further ado, let's get to it. Alright, so let's start off by taking a quick look at the mortgage broker layout pack. So go to elegantthemes.com/layouts if you want to see it for yourself, and then scroll down until you come across the mortgage broker layout pack. And if you click on it, you will see all of the layouts that are available. So you can join to download or click on the blue button to view the live demo, and this will redirect you to a live website. And over here, you can start exploring all of the different layouts that come with this layout pack and decide if you want to use them on your next WordPress website that you create using Divi. Now, in this tutorial, we're going to show you how to create a swipe menu bars with Divi. And this is a nice way to add an extra interaction to your website. And let's take a look at the outcome that you can expect. So this is the swipe menu bar, and people can just navigate through it using their touchpad, for instance, and see all of the menu items. But they can also use their swipe abilities on their phone or on their tablet and just swipe through these menu items. Now you will notice that we have certain elements on this menu bar. So we have the logo, we have a call to action, and then we have all of the menu items. And for people to be able to notice that they can scroll here or swipe, we have made the second menu item cut into half so that people can see that it's just the middle of it, and then that there's something after that as well. But you can choose for other ways to indicate that kind of menu bar to your visitors as well. But this is the approach that we'll go for within this live stream tutorial, and we'll show you how to recreate it from scratch. So let's get started. So the first thing you will need to do is, of course, make use of the mortgage broker layout pack, and you can do that as always by just uploading it from the pre-made layouts, creating all of the different pages. And once you do that, you can go back to your WordPress website. And now the first thing you will need to do here is disable the fixed navigation by going to Divi and theme options. So I've already disabled it, but by default it's always enabled. But you will need to disable this because otherwise there will be some space at the top of your page that will be there for the normal primary menu bar, and we want to get rid of that. And to do that, we'll need to disable this. So the next step is hiding the primary menu bar on our page. So go to the page that you've created using one of the mortgage broker layouts and enable the visual builder at the top. All right, so we've enabled the Divi builder, and to hide this primary menu bar, we'll need just a little bit of CSS code, and this just helps us hide this menu so we don't get rid of it entirely. So you can choose on which pages you want it to show up and on which you don't, but we're just going to hide it on this page in particular by opening the settings of our page, going to Advanced tab, and going to the custom CSS box over here, and we're going to add these lines of CSS code. So if you want to grab all of the CSS code, you can go to the blog post that we've mentioned in the description below. So just go there, click on it, and you will see all of the steps lined up as well. So you can go through those steps and recreate the tutorial from scratch, or just follow along with the video and read the CSS off the screen. But yeah, that's the first thing you will need to do in the visual builder itself. Now, the next thing you will need to do is make sure that there's enough space at the top of your page. So here, obviously, we can notice that there's enough, but let's just switch over to tablet and phone and make sure that there's enough space there as well. So it looks like we do have enough space. It could be that on smaller screen sizes, you have a different kind of margin or padding going on. So make sure that you check that out, because you definitely don't want any menu bar to overlap the content that you're sharing and make the text not readable. So that's something you definitely have to take into account. And then the next thing you will need to do is create a new section at the bottom of your page. And we're just going to use a regular section, and then we'll open the section settings, and we're going to remove all of the default top and bottom padding over here to reduce the space that's being taken up by this row. Now we can go ahead and add a row, and we're going to use a column structure with only one column. And I know that might seem a little bit weird. If you look at the outcome over here, it seems like there are plenty columns, but we'll recreate those columns using Divi and some CSS code. So we'll turn all of the columns that are placed within this row into a grid that counts several columns. And we'll also add a scroll to that. So for now, you just need one column, and you can open the row settings to make some changes. So the first thing we're going to do is add a white background color, because this will overlap all of the other sections on the page. And of course, you don't want it to be see-through, and to avoid that, you will need to add a white background color. And then we'll go to the sizing settings over here, and we're going to enable custom gutter width with a value of 1 to get rid of all of the space. And we'll also increase the width and max width to 100%. to allow the row to take up the entire width of the screen. Let's take a quick look. So let me just remove the spacing as well, the default spacing, and then you'll see that the row takes up the entire width of the screen. And we'll also add a box shadow. And I think this is an important step, because this will help create depth on the page and will make it obvious that the menu is a menu and that it's on top of everything else. And we're going to blur the box shadow out by increasing the value over here. We're using 80 pixels, and we'll also increase the transparency level of the shadow color over here. So we'll make it a bit darker, make it pop, and make it obvious that it is a menu bar. Okay, so now that we have the row settings, so if I hover this, you can see the size of the row. We can start adding the different modules. So we'll start with an image module, as you can see over here. And bear in mind that we're using specific values for the width and the height. So if you're using another set of dimensions, it could be that the result differs and that you have to tweak something. But the image that we're using for this tutorial in particular has a width of 226 and a height of 100 pixels. And again, you can find these details in the blog post, which I have mentioned in the description below as well, if you just want to go through that and just read it for yourself. So once you've uploaded the image, you can go to the design tab and change the image alignment to center. And then we'll go to the sizing tab over here, sizing settings over here, and we'll change the max width, and we're going to do that across the different screen sizes. Of course, we want to make sure that everything remains responsive. So on desktop, we'll use 75%. And I'm seeing someone asks on YouTube, is it possible to keep the logo so it always shows on the left side of the swipe menu rather than going off screen with the swipe? And yes, you can, and I will try to demonstrate that at the end of this tutorial. So once we're done, it is really simple, but you'll have to make some tweaks. So the design that we're creating right now is really specific. So if you recreate it from scratch, you will get a very responsive result. If you're using other dimensions for the image model, for instance, you will need to tweak things around. Okay, so next let's go to the spacing settings, and over here we're going to modify the custom top and bottom padding. So we'll use some values for smaller screen sizes. So on desktop we don't need anything, but on tablet we do. So we'll need 15 pixels for the top and the bottom, and 25 on phone. So you should definitely play around with all of these values. So once you create the swipe menu bar, you can definitely play around, tweak it, and make it highly responsive. So I think that's a very important part to making this work. So now we have the first module that we want to show up in our swipe menu bar, and we can move on to the next one, which is a button module. So you have to follow the order from left to right. That's the way you're going to add the modules into your column downwards. So we'll change the button text over here, and then we'll go to the design tab. So again, you can tweak this the way you want to. I'm just going to go through these really quick because it doesn't really matter. These are just design modifications, and we're focusing on the technique more than on these details. But again, you can find these in the blog post, which I've mentioned in the description below. And this is a tip that I've given in a previous live stream as well. I think if you're modifying certain values for different screen sizes, I always go to wireframe mode, and this just helps add those values really quick without having to load that specific screen size, so that you can definitely notice it, how quickly it switches between both. And these are the values that I'm adding. I'm using a white text color. I'm also changing the background color. And then the border width to 0. I'll increase the border radius. So this is a button that matches the layout pack in general. So if you're building any other kind of website, feel free to modify all of these values or add other modules as well. So you can choose for yourself what kind of modules are being used within this swipe menu bar. And then later on, we'll just make it a global section and add it to other pages as well. So that's something you can definitely play around with and see what works best for you. And we'll also enable uppercase over here. And now we can switch over to desktop view again and add some custom padding values along with some top margin, top and bottom margin to be precise. So 15 pixels for the top and the bottom. And then we'll add 15 pixels for the top and the bottom padding as well, and 40 pixels for the left and the right padding. All right, so now we have these two modules, which equal these two in our swipe menu bar. Okay, so let's move on to the next module, and that'll be a text module. And over here, we're going to add the name of our page. So this is something that rarely changes. If you have a primary menu bar that you use throughout your entire page, you can definitely just approach it this way by adding a text module and adding a link to it, to that specific page. And unless you, change your website drastically, you won't have to touch these. But since we're also adding this as a global section, this means that you'll have to modify it once. So say, for instance, you're changing a page, a URL or anything like that, you'll have to modify it once, and it will apply to each one of the pages that you've added this swipe menu bar to. Okay, so over here, you definitely have to add the link to your page, obviously, and we'll also add a background color. So the reason why we're doing this, so the reason why we've chosen this design is to make sure people know how how big a menu item is within the menu. So when they move on to the second menu item, they see that a part of it is missing and they figure out that they have to scroll. But there are obviously other ways to approach this as well. This is one that suited my design needs, I would say, and which one this is a design that I preferred for this tutorial, but you can definitely play around and add an arrow or anything like that to make it obvious to people that they have to scroll or swipe. All right, so now that we've added the text and of course the background color and the link, we can go to the text settings, and over here we're just going to modify it to make it match with the layout pack. And then we'll change the text size as well. Okay, I'm going to switch over to wireframe view to make this happen a bit quicker. Okay, so 0.9, 1.9, and 2.4. And we'll also change the text orientation to center. And then we'll switch back to desktop view over here, and we'll add 30 pixels to the top and bottom padding to create enough space for the module. And once you're done modifying the first menu item, so of course you can tweak as much as you want, make it look exactly the way you want to, but once you're done with the first menu item, you can go ahead and clone it, in this case up to 5 times or more if you have more pages, but then you'll slightly need to modify some CSS code afterwards. But for this example in particular, we'll need 6 text modules. And of course, we're going to change the page title. And also make sure that you change the link of each one of these menu items and make it direct to the correct page on your website. And we're also going to change the background color into white for menu item 2, 4, and 6. Just to have this kind of transition from one menu item to the other. All right, so these are all the modules that we're using, and now we have to get this result. And to do that, we'll need a bit of CSS code. It's just a little bit, promise. So the first thing we're going to do is make the entire row stick to the top. And to do that, we'll add a few single lines of CSS code to the main element of the row. So we're making sure that the position of the row is fixed, that the distance between the top and the row is 0, and we'll also make sure that this overlaps the entire page. You can also just leave this out and modify it in the visibility settings instead, just to make sure that it overlaps all of the design elements on the page. All right, so moving on, we're going to transform the column into a grid with, the number of columns that equals the number of modules that is within the column. So in this case, we have 6 menu items, and we have another module which adds up to 7, and the image module which adds up to 8, which means that we need 8 different grid columns. And let me just add the CSS code really quick, and make sure that you add the CSS code to the column main element, not to the row main element. So we're turning the column into a grid, not the row itself. So here we have it. And over here you can decide on the percentages. So you can decide for each of one of the modules what you want it to take up, how much space you want it to take up within the swipe menu bar. And I recommend using these values because these work really well for smaller screen sizes as well. Because you have to figure that the lower you go in this percentage, the less space it will take up on smaller screen sizes as well. So you definitely have to find a balance over there. For instance, you can increase these. And if I just show you really quick, if I increase this to 35, the second menu item won't show up. And if I change it back to 25, people will be able to notice that they have to swipe to see the other menu items. But you can definitely play around with all of these grid columns and the design and the modules that you're using. Okay, so moving on, we need to add a CSS class to the column itself. And this step is only necessary if you want to get rid of the scroll bar that you can notice over here. You can definitely leave that as well and just style the scroll bar for people to be able to notice that they can swipe or scroll there. But if you just want to get rid of it and approach it in a different way, you can add a custom CSS class and you can decide for yourself what name you're using. I'm using swipe menu, and then you have two options. So you can add the CSS code that hides the scroll bar on the page itself, but you can also hide it on the entire website. So as you can notice over here, it's already gone because I've probably added it to the entire website. So if you want to add it to the entire website, you can go to Divi, theme options. And if you scroll down over here, you can simply add these lines of CSS code. Again, you can find all of the CSS code by going to the blog post, which I've mentioned in the description below. And if you want to add it to the page itself, you can open the page settings, go to the advanced app, and over here, add it to the custom CSS box. And if you save it and exit the visual builder, you will get this result. So I'm just going to log out for you guys to be able to see the outcome. So here we have it. And this looks good across all screen sizes. So let me just shrink my browser size so you can guys see it. So you guys can see it. All right. All right, so let's go back to that question on YouTube. Is it possible to keep the logo on the left side and have the swipe menu happen on the right side, right? Yes, you can. And let me just demonstrate that really quick for you guys. So this is not part of the written tutorial. I'm just going to, experiment right here and try to show you guys how to do it. And so let me just go back here and enable the visual builder. Okay, so if I scroll down over here, if you want to keep the logo at the left side and only turn the other side into a swipe mechanism, I would say, you'll have to change the column structure. So let me just switch over to wireframe view really quick and change the column structure. So I'll just change it into a column structure that has a small column at the left and a big one at the right. So this is the one I'm going for. If you can see me hovering it, this is the one I'll go for. And I'm obviously going to place all of the different modules within the second column. So I'm turning the second column into this kind of swipe mechanism. And I'm keeping the first column exactly the way it is. So The only thing that's within my first column is the image module. And now I'm going to open these settings over here and switch back to the visual builder. And I'm going to copy this CSS code and place it in the main element of the second column instead. So here we have the swipe scroll effect. Obviously you can get rid of one of these percentages over here because now we don't have a 7. We don't have 8, excuse me. We don't have 8 grid columns, but we have 7 instead. So here we have it. So again, change the column structure, place the image module containing your logo in the first column, and then add the CSS code to the main element of the second column instead of the first one. And you'll also need to transfer the CSS class if you want to style the scroll bar and just add it to the second column, but you can just leave it out as well and just have this kind of user experience going on. So I hope that answered your question. And Andres, hope I'm saying that name right, asks, is this tutorial being recorded to be checked anytime later? Yes, you can always come back to this video and follow all the steps, or go to the blog post, which I've mentioned in the description below as well. So you can choose either one of those options. All right, so that was all for this live stream. Thank you for watching, and we hope that you're enjoying this ongoing Divi design initiative where we try to put something extra into your design toolbox each and every week. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video or a live stream.